to talk a little bit about the AI assistants and orchestrating AI assistants. This is related to the trajectory of the technology overall, where we are moving from very niche application of machine learning and LLMs to pervasive applications. And AI assistants, AI agents all refer to a class of products where we are delegating more and more of human level tasks to the machine. And this whole talk is about how do you orchestrate a bunch of these assistants after the initial introduction of the assistants. So what we see, this is very informed by our experience in fintech. So these are all the caveats for the conversation, that this is internal facing. The structure and the approach for external facing assistants and agents is very different. So these are very important assumptions about this whole approach. And we're also looking at highly skilled individuals. We're not looking at the mom and pops of the world, but people who know exactly what they want out of the system. And we are in highly regulated space, so everything happens with high degree of control and auditability overall. This is the context in which we are building assistants. Think of assistants as interns. They have fair amount of knowledge with some, but they require oversight. These assistants are very task specific. They're not open-ended. We are not asking them to one day build robots, another day book tickets, and a third day clean vessels. That is not the idea. We are giving them predefined tasks. Go research this talk and prepare a one-page note, right, on this particular talk. That kind of task. These are not open-ended. These are controlled agents, and they have fair amount of like domain knowledge. For example, in this case, understanding stock market valuations, P ratios, and things like that. Now, these assistants could be operating in a batch mode or an interactive mode. ChatGPT gives us the idea that everything is interactive. That is actually not the case. Many of them are just pipeline. They are operating in batch mode because there's no particular need for chat. It is about the task done. And the one expectation because of the class, because of the domain that we operate in, is that these are high trust assistants. These are not any random assistants. For example, if you're looking at a recipe for a particular dish, we could, the quality could be variable and you can do all of those things. I mean, you can survive the answers. But if you're looking at a banking license or underwriting a risk product and so on, then you need a high degree of trust, accuracy, and usability in order for it to be impactful in the enterprise context. So this is the broad definition of assistant. There are many other definitions that are in vogue and based on different degrees of autonomy and so on. Agents is a broad word that is used, but there is fair amount of ambiguity and design dimensions within the agent space itself. It will take like a couple of years for a language to be established for all of this, right? So the future that we see has many assistants or agents that will get deployed. There will be one human and many software robots, if you will. And we could, depending upon the degree of autonomy, the complexity, and so on, we'll have some language to discuss all of this. We see at least two paths to this hyper-productive future enterprise. One is through what we think of as thin agents, the baby AGI and so on, which has clean abstractions, but very limited capability in terms of what it can do. Then the second path is through complex assistants. These are basically, you have to solve realistic problems, so they tend to be very messy. So you first solve the problem and then scale it from there, as opposed to agents where you're first creating the abstraction and trying to solve problems. So there are a couple of different approaches, and there could be a hybrid version of both. In all cases, we are going to be on a journey where we are looking to delegate more and more control to the machine, and the motivations could be any number, which is that we can run the organization a lot more efficiently, a lot more predictably, and so on. Right? Now, these assistants, like I was saying, their tasks are specific because our experience suggests that in order for the organization to adopt this technology, it has to solve a feasible problem. It has to, the person or the individuals, humans using these assistants should see value, clear, well-defined value. In their mind, it typically boils down to, I need to get a task done. Can the machine do at least part of it so that I can build on top of it? The third thing is that ability to predict the cost and manage the organizational dynamics becomes easier once there are clearly definable boundaries, that the assistant helps this individual save this much amount of time and therefore it is worth so much. Also, the scoping down of the task or defining the task very well gives us an ability to build all the non-functional requirements that help with the adoption. For example, accuracy, timing, auditability, and so on. Because the task will built into the definition of task is a bunch of clearly articulated requirements, as opposed to open-ended. A lot of AI projects are failing, in my opinion, because of open-ended requirements and expectations from the agents or the assistants. The last reason we will actually use task as a construct to bound the assistant is because in the real world enterprises, there is a lot of context, there is a lot of complexity. We need deep domain knowledge. Imagine an assistant for a doctor. If it doesn't understand the entire hospital ecosystem, the training of the doctors and so on, it won't be able to do its job well. So you can't have a generalized service, but something that precisely understands diagnosis, for example, what it means to diagnose and how do you document it and so on. So for all of these reasons, we think that there will be task-specific assistant and there will be many assistants that will be, in order for the organization to derive its value, we will orchestrate them. Interestingly, what we found over a period of time is that it's not a single level orchestration, but we'll have actually multi-level orchestration. And this reflects the complexity of the actual workflows that we see in the real world. There's a lot of information. First of all, each assistant has a substructure itself, and there's a lot of information flowing within the assistant and across assistants. So we will see this multi-level orchestration. If we zoom into a single assistant, you can see why we need orchestration. A typical assistant is dealing with both structured and unstructured data. The task requires us to integrate LLM with machine learning rules and other data sets. Also, these tasks tend to involve multi-step workflows with different policies and so on. There is enough workflow complexity, state management, policy implementation, and so on. So each assistant itself has its own complexity. And when you put all of these assistants together, there is the next level of complexity. Now, for example, if two assistants have to talk to each other, they need to have notions of shared namespace. Are we referring to the same bit of information, for example? Where do I find the information that assistant number 1 or 2 has accessed, for example? Once assistant number 3 has done, how does it trigger the assistant number 7, which is supposed to follow? How do I, if one assistant had determined that a particular loan application has to go through the slow path, how does it pass the execution context to other assistants and so on? So what we see is there is a set of services that are part of the inter-assistant orchestration layer, and they handle everything from the data in motion as well as data at rest, the messaging, the control paths, and finally the auditability and policy application. In all cases, these are very early thoughts. Most of these abstractions are still in the works. It will take probably a year for the interfaces to be developed. But we definitely see that workflows are the core constructs that need to be built, and this orchestration is almost inevitable.